Alright, once you have the miniature cut out and the mold lines are trimmed off and everything, it's looking really nice. The next thing that you want to do is you want to choose a base. I have a few examples here to choose from, but the thing is that these you can pretty much all get at your local gaming store, like comic book store. They usually have quite a bit of bases to choose from. And these are the bases that I have right now. These bases I got from a place called Nan's in my local Houston gaming store, and these are for larger miniatures like giant boar, giant something or other, something that takes up 4 squares instead of just 1 square. And these squares are all 1-inch squared, so therefore it's the same size as any sort of tile, like D&D tiles or gaming tiles that you'll have that have squares marking out like 5 foot, like supposedly 5 foot sections for your character to move across and everything. So if it's a bigger creature, use one of these, and it doesn't matter what color it comes in because you're going to be using a primer to cover it up anyways. So there's that. There's also the Pathfinder ones, which I thought was a very neat idea to make them the 1-inch squares so that whenever you're using your miniature, you can move them across the 5 foot squares and they fit in their own little space, and that's it. And that actually works out really well and it's really useful. And that would be almost the way that I would suggest for people to do it, but I kind of enjoy round miniatures better. Things like this that actually you're able to move around in the same 1-inch square. But the thing with round compared to squares, the reason why I like them is the round kind of gives an idea of the ground continues on into the rest of the world, as opposed to the squares squared off, boxed off, and kind of limited looking, to where it's like, oh, this miniature is a neat little miniature, as opposed to this one's like, oh, this person's in this like actual different world type of thing. It sounds nerdy as hell, I know, just go with me on this. Just give me the benefit of the doubt here. I'm a nerd, I know that already, but I think that this looks cooler to me. But the thing is that a lot of the time whenever you get miniatures, they're either slightly bigger than this. With Reaper miniatures, they have this nice rock formation or something underneath them that I really like the look of whenever I put them together. It's usually slightly bigger than this, or even bigger than slightly bigger than one of these, so they don't really fit very well on a 1-inch square or 1-inch circle. And I don't want to limit the miniature and how good it looks because of the tiles that are laid out. But most hero miniatures, like basically miniatures that your character will be in D&D and stuff, are usually around this size. And this is just slightly bigger than a 1-inch square, so sometimes whenever you have everybody all in a small group, it gets kind of cluttered and very tight. I really do like the look of these the most whenever it comes to the characters that I actually enjoy. Whenever it's just like an orc or something, like a giant rat, things of the sort, that's just kind of an enemy, a giant spider, so on and so forth, I'll use these. If it's just like a soldier or something, I'll use these guys because, as I said before, I like the round comparatively to the square because of the fact that it kind of lets you imagine beyond the space of the miniature, and as well as it fits in these 1-inch squares so you can move them around really nice and easy whenever there's a big group of them, which comes into play with monsters and NPCs and stuff like that. These two characters here are like important NPC characters in my campaign, so I'm going to be putting them on the hero style bases because I want them to look as good as they can, because I really actually like these characters. But before we put them on the bases, what we're going to do is we're going to, if you remember, we're going to straighten this miniature's sword out. So I'll go grab a lighter real quick. Alright, so here's my lighter, here's the miniature. You turn on the lighter like so, and you just kind of run the sword over the flame like so. You don't want to get anywhere really close to it. You just want to get near it to where the heat is traveling onto it. You don't want to just hold it in place. You want to kind of just burn it lightly on the edges, and eventually it'll start to move on its own. It'll get loose. And then you can push it into place, hold it in place for a little while, and it'll dry like that, in that shape. Let's see if that's good enough. No, not yet. Gotta get a little bit closer. It's better to be too far away than too close. So just work your way towards the flame. There you go, see? How it's getting kind of wiggly now. Now with this, you can absolutely push it into the place that you want it to be and just hold it there, as I said before. Takes a little bit of force to actually try and get it into the right place. And forgive me for moving the camera around, not focusing the camera. This is a time sensitive thing, so I'm going to be focusing on this much better. Alright. If you look at that, the tip is only slightly curved, which I can take care of that with the razor, or just kind of push back into place a little bit, but it is much straighter now. It looks a lot better. So you can do that with any of these kind of plastic miniatures and just kind of push it back into place. Alright, so next up what we're going to do is we're literally going to glue our miniatures onto the bases. This one actually has a little bit of brown. I was just kind of giving somebody an example of painting, but this isn't really going to affect the project at all, so just ignore that. It's supposed to look like that, but I painted this just to show somebody a painting method I used. And I would have switched out that one for a different one, but I'm on a budget. What we do is we take the miniatures glue and we just put some on here like this. Don't really need to overdo it. You just kind of put some on and then you push it around with the tip, as far as I'm concerned. There might be a different way to do it, but this is the way that I do it. And then you literally just take your miniature and you set it down here onto the base. Center it a little bit. You got time to kind of push it around to where you want it to be. As you can see, it's not like completely centered or anything, so I'll push it around to where I want it. Alright, that looks pretty centered to me. And I tried to cover up that line as much as possible so that there's no gaps whenever we're looking at the miniature later on. And with this guy, since he has that little base on the bottom, what we're going to do, instead of just doing the very bottom of it like so, we're going to just put some along the edge of this little line here, this little line of metal. There we go. And then we're just going to place it in that socket. Center them a little bit more, and there we go. Now what we're going to do is we're going to wait for them to dry, and then we'll prime them next. Alright, now that the glue is set, what we're going to do is we're going to remove this nice mat, which to be honest isn't really the mat that I use for crafting things with paint and glue, and this just provides a really good contrast between the miniatures and the background so that you can see the miniatures better. And I'll show you what I kind of normally work on now. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that you can use things like this for getting rid of mold lines, which is little files, and you can just rub them down really gently like to make them a little bit better looking, but I found that the razor works plenty well.